Hi there. Thanks for coming out and joining me on the New Era YouTube channel. My name is Paul, and today we're going to be discussing ICEDirect, its architecture and its security, critical components that you should understand before you implement ICEDirect in your own environment. We're going to spend probably 15 minutes together, sometime in a PowerPoint, and then the majority of the time in an actual demonstration. And I'll give you the cook's tour, if you would, of ICEDirect and its primary functions. So let me go ahead and share my screen and bring up that PowerPoint that I mentioned. And we'll go ahead and get started. So just a bit of staging here. You're likely a system programmer or security specialist. You spend a lot of time with 3270s, TSO, ISPF, managing a collection of LPARs. Quite likely, you're running inspections, Sysplex inspections, LPAR inspections, building baselines, quite likely defining policy decision and policy enforcement points with the control editor, and actively monitoring and reviewing the findings of the monitors in our control journal, and maybe reviewing your registry and user profile from time to time. All of these are data structures, if you would, inside the ICE data space itself. The purpose of ICEDirect is to give you access to that information and then the controls from a browser. So let me explain a bit about how this is going to work. The first thing is that there are best practices that we believe should be followed here. The most important is to first log on to ZOSMF, authenticate yourself with ZOS, and then in turn, select ICEDirect from the ZOSMF menu, and then in turn, re-authenticate yourself with ZOS. And then in turn, meet the requirements of multi-factor ICE, which will send you a one-time password that will give you access to the ICEDirect environment. Now, why is this important? It's important and it's a best practice because ICEDirect is integrated into ZOSMF. Because of that, whatever security your organization has decided to apply to ZOSMF will automatically apply to ICEDirect. And then from there, the additional authentication of your attempt at the browser and attempt at ICEDirect will require additional authentication. That's critically important because the establishment of a link between the browser and a ZOS LPAR is a critical link, and it needs to be secure as possible. Once the link is in place, you'll be working with an MVS web server, total MVS, MVS datasets, MVS files, serving up recs and HTML constructs that will allow ICEDirect to interface with the ICE data space to satisfy whatever requirements you might have. Here's a little more detail. Here's you again, logging on. The web server, which is based on the MPE framework, now that's the main integrity processing environment, manages the TCP/IP connection between the browser and the web server itself. Hopefully, it's HTTPS, meaning that you have set up a TTLS, another good and best practice. The web server, in turn, has access to MVS DASD, where we have stored HTML files, help files, CSS files, JavaScripts, images, PDFs, and Rex programs. When requests are received, the framework initiates a service called the Work Manager. The Work Manager, in turn, uses cross-memory services to establish a started task for each individual user. As users log on, more started tasks are started, meaning that this is a multi-server environment. No one is waiting for anyone else. Each individual's work is private to them, and servers can come and go as needed to satisfy the requirements of the user community. The ICE server that sits on the back end of all of this has access to the integrity controls environment. And it in turn is accessed through cross-memory services, satisfying the individual requirements that are established by the individual REX address spaces. So that's the basic idea. What do we get for that? We get this. This is the look of ICEDirect. It is a framework, if you would, that has as its core iframes, highly secure. Each is sandboxed. Each has its own content security policy that's served up by the server. The area that's shown on the left-hand side is what we refer to as the sidebar, and it contains a number of little applications that we'll show you how to access in just a few moments. The sidebar, in turn, generates requests. My browser, or excuse me, my PowerPoint's going crazy here. Generates requests, and those requests are satisfied by ZOS. And you can see this little spinner down here in the lower iframe that says ZOS is working, please wait. This is at least as fast, not faster, than the response you'll get from ZOSMF. But as with ZOSMF, patience is a virtue in dealing with browser-based applications that go against ZOS systems. So not the fastest in the world, probably, but it is going to get the job done. So with that expectation set, let me go ahead and end this show and go directly to a browser. So I'll launch Safari, but this works with Firefox and Chrome and the Microsoft browser. There's no particular difference between any of them. They all seem to function well in the ICEDirect environment. Now I'm going to go the best practice way. This is through ZOSMF. And I want to point out something here that I consider to be serious that you need to pay attention to, again, from a best practices perspective. You'll notice that when the browser was launched and hooked to the introductory page for ZOSMF, it shows my user ID. And when I click on that, the browser will dutifully enter my password. Now, you don't want to do that. You want to turn autofill off. You do not want that on, because that means that anyone that gets to your laptop or your desktop and knows the URL for ZOSMF, it's likely going to be able to coattail in on your user ID and password. Obviously not a good thing in a ZOS environment. We can go ahead and log in. And my preference is for the links view, and I'll go ahead and click on links. And you can see ICEDirect here is integrated into the links view. But we can also go to the classic interface, and we can see ICEDirect is also integrated here in this pull down menu right above Shop Z and right above support for ZOS. Again, this is the best practice way to do it, because someone had to give you the credentials that were necessary for you to be able to log on to ZOSMF, to authenticate with ZOS. And once you did, and you had access to these menus, because ICEDirect is integrated into ZOSMF, it means that in the next step, which is to attempt to log on to ICEDirect, you will have to re-authenticate with ZOS and then in turn authenticate with MFI, which is multi-factor ICE, another form of multi-factor authentication. So I'm going to go ahead and click on ICEDirect. Now we opened up another tab, And I still have autofill turned on. It's not a best practice. Don't do it. I'm just doing it to illustrate something here. I'll go ahead and click it. It fills in my password for me. I'll go ahead and authenticate. Now, in this authentication process, what's happened is that the ICEDirect environment has sent me a one-time pass token that I need to retrieve from my email in order to continue my logon. So I'll go ahead and enter that, and just paste it in. Oops, I don't want to paste it 10 times, paste it once. But before I do re-authenticate with this multi-factor process, know that there are many different options here. There are instances where email is not an acceptable option. We can support that by allowing you to register a secure PIN with the ICE environment. Or if email is possible, but a higher level of security is demanded, then a third party can be brought into play who will receive the one-time token, and the users will have to communicate with them in order to continue on their way into ICEDirect. So I'll go ahead and authenticate. And we'll see that frames panel I mentioned earlier. Again, we have the sidebar. We have the directs frame up here at the top. We have the results frame down here at the bottom. In the middle, we have the crossbar. The crossbar allows you to log out, find out something about your browser if you want to do it. In this case, clicked on it and it says, hey, you're in Safari. Here's all the gory details. That could be important if there was a support issue that revolved around the browser to be able to do that. We also provide a function called my host. And my host is important because from your perspective, it's important to know what you're actually logged on to. The model, the serial number of the CPU that's actually processing and making the server viable. When was it last IPL? What is unit address, load parm? What licenses do you have? All of those things are made available directly to you so that you can validate the server, the ZOS that's supporting it, and the licenses that you have, which will in turn dictate what you will be able to do with ICEDirect. And there are other functions here that deal with displaying parameters and server outages and other kinds of things. Now, if you clear the lower frame, just click that button and the lower frame will get cleared. We could drop down into something that looks like an image focus oriented set of panels. This one deals with ICE-BAT-A, a batch process that runs LPAR by LPAR specific inspections. I'm using a worksheet here. I could use catalog search, but I decided to set up my own worksheet. And I get a little dashboard of sorts, and I can go directly to findings here. I can go directly into blueprints. I can do just a ton of different things from this panel to help me to understand the findings in a particular inspection. And I'll go ahead and click on one of these just so you can get an idea of that. Again, patience, combining inspections and blueprints together to present a picture that we think can be helpful in understanding all the steps in the IPL process itself. So up at the top, we have NIPS. In the blue, we have IEA-SYS processing. And in the green, we have the starts of all the subsystems, JES, VTAM, TCP/IP, CICS, et cetera. If we find one that has a little warning next to it, we can click on that. And we'll see the member and any related issues. There aren't any issues in the member itself. The real issues come from the data set that the member is telling ZOS to start. They don't have appropriate security profiles, and that can be an issue. We can do a member list here. We can search the journal. We can do all kinds of different activities. Just back up here. We'll go to my members. This is a function that's supported by the control editor. We have a little search panel here. We can decide that we want to limit our search to, let's say, PROG members. And we want all of them that are in the journal. And we want all of them that have been recorded since February 16th of this year through, let's say, the end of February. So we'll put a 3 here. I haven't run this search, so I don't know what it's going to produce. I hope it produces something. And we're going to ask for our results to be presented in a donut chart. And it comes back and it says, yeah, I've got some. Here they are. And they're all hot linked. So I can either select them from the individual segments here, or I can select them from the legend. And if I select one, I'll get what we refer to as metadata. That's a sort of summarization of the content of the journal itself. And if I click on the number, I could have had 10 of those. I could have had 20 of them. These just happen to be backups. It shows me what the content is of that particular PROG member. This is the content right here. So I think likely you will for sure benefit from this if you're doing things like Sysplex inspections using the background. We can look at the Sysplex history. We could delete things if we wanted to. And I'll end on this. We can display a Sysplex dashboard. There happen to be 10 LPARs in this particular Sysplex, so it takes a bit of time. But from here, all of these things are linked to various functions that allow you to better understand what was discovered, what the configuration looks like of each of the LPARs in the Sysplex, and other functions support the Sysplex itself, its coupling facility, the commonality or differences between the parms that define the individual images to become citizens in the Sysplex itself. So just wrapping this up until now, our information has been confined to TSO ISPF 3270 environment. Now it's available directly to you on the World Wide Web, and what we consider to be one of the most secure browser environments available. Okay, well, thank you very much for joining me. I hope you'll come out and visit with us again on YouTube soon. We have lots of stuff out here for you to look at. Have a good day. Bye-bye.